In this video, we're going to take a look at an alternative to the if function called the VLOOKUP function. V stands for vertical. There's also an HLOOKUP that we're not going to take a look at, but if you can figure out how VLOOKUP works, the HLOOKUP works almost exactly the same way. So first of all, we're going to take a look at why you would need something like this. And if I double click on this formula here, or just look up on the formula bar, I see that I'm doing an A or a B or a C or a D or an F. Okay, so I'm choosing from among 5 grades. And the if function is used to select from among 2 things. And if you want to select from more than 2 things, you have to put an if statement inside of an if statement. And so the first one says, you know, if it's this big, it's an A. And if it's not, then we don't know for sure, but we have another if to see if it's a B, and if it's not, we don't know for sure, but we have another if to see if it's a C, and if it's not, we don't know for sure, but we have another if to see if it's a D, and if it's not an A or a B or a C or a D, then it has to be an F. So if you want to choose from among 5 things, you need 4 if functions. If you want to choose from among 10 things, you need 9 if functions, and basically it's 1 less than the number of things that you need to choose from. So here's another one that's kind of ugly. This one uses pluses and minuses, and it doesn't use an A plus. Down here for D, it doesn't use a D plus or a D minus. So this could even be bigger than it is. So we've got A minus, B plus, B minus, C plus, C minus, D, and F. We've got 10 things to choose from there, and you can do it. And it's not really that hard. Once you get the ball rolling here, it's pretty easy to figure out what all the remaining if statements look like. But it is long, and it's kind of tedious, and it's easy to make a mistake when you type in a formula that's that long. Fortunately, there is an alternative, and the alternative is using the VLOOKUP function. And I have hidden here behind this text box, I have what's called a lookup table. And the lookup table works like this. We have a value like somebody's average, and we look it up in the first column of the table. And when we find their average over here, like 95, then we go across and we return the letter A. If their grade is 93, we look up 93 and we go across and we find A minus. Okay. If we have something like here, I don't want an F. Let's look at say 99. Okay, 99 is not in the first column. So what happens if you have a value that doesn't show up here? Well, this is what happens. Excel takes the number and it goes through here looking for the value 99. Okay, if it finds it, great. It just goes over here and figures out what the grade is. If it does not find it, it stops when it gets to the first one that is greater than or equal to, or greater than, I guess, 99, and then it backs up 1. Okay? So if somebody had a 94, for example, that's not quite enough to get an A, but it's good enough for an A minus. So we go through here, and as soon as we don't find 94, but as soon as we find something bigger than 94, we back up 1, and we give the student a grade of an A minus. Okay? So that's how it works. Now, I'm going to take this, now we'll just do it over here in column F. We're going to look up the grade, and we need to use the lookup function. So that is under formulas, and there is a lookup and reference group here. We're going to click on that. And the very last one alphabetically is the VLOOKUP. So we're going to choose VLOOKUP. Okay? And it needs to know 3 things in order to be able to figure out what the person's grade is. First, it needs to know what's the value that you're looking up. Well, I'm looking up the 95. Okay, so click on C2. And then tab down or click down in the next box. And it wants to know where my table array is. Okay, that's the lookup table. It does not include the headings. So we go over here and we highlight everything in column J and column K from row 4 down to row 14. Okay, now that's correct, but if you keep in mind the fact that we're going to be copying this formula down the page, then that is not going to change. That needs to be an absolute cell reference, so you can hit function key F4 and put the dollar signs in, or if you like, you can just type them in yourself. And then it wants to know once we find the person's score in the first column, which column of the table actually has the grade that we want to return? Well, it's column 2 of the table. So my table is just a 2-column table, and I didn't really mean to start doing that. So let me delete that. I was just trying to show it to you. And we want the number 2 in there. So look up the number 95. You know, when you find it in this table here, go over to column 2, and that's the thing I want to have returned. So let's click on OK. And it tells me that George got an A. Now I'm going to copy this down the page a ways, and it looks like we have a problem here. It looks like everybody, I'm going to change the indentation on this a little bit. Yeah, let's try that. Everybody's getting an A, okay, and that doesn't seem right. Well, here's the problem. When I first created the table, I actually created it using percents like this. Now, and these numbers are not percents, they're whole numbers. Now, if I change the formatting of this from percents to commas, then it's easy to see what the problem is. Okay, those numbers are actually numbers that are all less than or equal to 1. And every single score I've got over here is bigger than that. So if the number goes off of the scale, which in this case every number does, then you take the last item on the scale, go to column 2, and that's what you return. Okay. So even though it looked like I had the right data here, I didn't really, and so it's not working correctly. So there's a couple of ways you could do it. You could go back to your formula here, and you could take this and divide it by 100, and it would work. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to change my lookup table, though, so that I am actually looking up numbers from 0 to 100 rather than from 0 to 1. And actually, this is kind of a useful little trick that comes in handy once in a while. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take whatever the number is over in column J and just multiply it by 100. Okay? And if I do that, well, 0 is still 0. But if I do it with all the other numbers, that number is too wide for column L, so I just got to widen it a little bit. And I went one too far, so I'm just going to go down there and hit the delete key. Okay, so these are the numbers that I want in my table over here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy them from here. I'm going to put them in the table. Okay. Now, let's select all of them, and then let's do a Control-C to copy them to the clipboard. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to paste them in, and something interesting is going to happen. We get this. Okay. And these formulas here, if you go look at these formulas, I'm going to hit escape to get rid of that dancing line. If you look at these formulas here, it says H4 times 100. Well, that's the numbers over here. Remember, I had relative cell references that were saying go over 2 and multiply by 100. And now it's going over 2 and multiplying by 100, and everything's all goofed up. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to reselect this stuff, and I'm going to do a Control-C to copy it to the clipboard. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm not going to do regular paste, because if I do, it's going to multiply these numbers, which don't exist, times 100. I'm going to get zeros all the way down again. So let's go to our paste options over here. And one of the options for pasting is to paste in the values instead of the formulas. Okay, and we've got an option for the values. We've got an option for the values and the number formatting. And we've got the values and the source formatting. And it actually looks like both of those are going to turn out this. No, they're not going to turn out the same. So there's the source formatting, and I'll leave it with the original formatting. So let's pick that one. And now if I go look here and look at these, you sort of got, look up here on the formula bar. There are no formulas anymore. Those are the actual numbers. And over here, I'm still multiplying those by 100, and all I got to do is make this a little wider, and you'll see what's going on. And I don't need those anymore, so I'm just going to go to the top of column L. I'm going to hit the delete key, and they're all gone. And then the dancing line is still there, so I'm going to hit escape once to get rid of that. And now I've got the correct lookup table. Okay, the correct values in the first column of the lookup table. So if you look at these now, I'm just going to copy them all the way down. And I've got a few more rows here. Okay, so if I copy them all the way down, if you compare everything in column E with column F, they should be the same all the way down. So this simple function right here is doing the same thing as this complicated series of if functions over here. And If you want to double check and make sure that everything is the same, here's a quick way to do it. We're going to put an equal sign in there, and I'm going to say is E2 equal to F2, and I should get true all the way down. And if I see something in that column that's not true, then I'll know that they're not equal. And if you look here, everything is true all the way down. So that is one version of the lookup function. And in the next video, we're going to look at some other options for the lookup function as well.